Cole wiped the sweat from his forehead and checked his cargo list for the third time. The docks of Prime were loud and hot, filled with the sounds of ships landing and taking off, merchants shouting in a dozen different languages, and machines beeping and whirring as they moved heavy crates from one place to another. He had been working these docks for almost 2 years now. Before that, he had been a combat medic in the Earth Defense Forces. Before that, he had been a kid from a small town who dreamed of seeing the stars. Well, he had seen them now. The stars were not as romantic as the movies made them look. Mostly, they were just far away and cold. Humanity had made first contact 7 years ago. An alien ship had appeared in Earth's orbit, and everything changed. Suddenly, humans learned they were not alone in the universe. They also learned they were not very impressive. The galaxy was full of species that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Humans were the new kids, the primitives, the latecomers to a party that had been going on for. Did not mind. He kept his head down, moved cargo, collected his pay, and tried not to cause trouble. That was the secret to surviving on the edges of galactic society. Do not stand out. Do not make waves. Just do your job and go home. The spaceport around him was crowded with aliens of every shape and size. Tall walked past with their bodies made of living crystal, light bending and shifting inside them like trapped rainbows. Groups of clicked and buzzed to each other, their insect-like bodies covered in hard shells of green and brown. And towering above everyone else were the massive warriors with black exoskeletons that looked like they were carved from obsidian stone. Had learned to stay away from They were a proud species, famous across the galaxy for their warrior traditions. They looked at humans the way a wolf might look at a mouse, not with hatred, just with complete disinterest. He finished unloading his cargo near a civilian walkway and started filling out his delivery confirmation. The work was boring, but boring was good. Boring meant safe. Boring meant he would live to see another day. That was when he heard the child. It was a small sound, a high-pitched giggle that cut through the noise of the docks. Looked up and saw her. A child, barely reaching his knee, her crystalline body still soft and cloudy with youth. She was wandering away from a group of adults who were deep in conversation, not noticing that their little one had slipped away. Smiled slightly. Kids were the same everywhere, it seemed, always curious, always finding ways to get into trouble. He was about to look away when he heard another sound, a deep mechanical groan, metal screaming under stress. He looked up. A cargo skiff was floating about 50 feet above the walkway. These skiffs were common on the docks, big flat platforms that used anti-gravity technology to move heavy loads. This one was carrying at least 9 tons of industrial equipment. And its anti-system was failing. Could see it happening in slow motion. The skiff tilted. Warning lights flashed. The machinery on top of it shifted and the whole thing began to fall. Directly toward the child. The little girl was standing right beneath it, looking up at the pretty lights with wonder in her crystal eyes. She did not understand what was happening. She did not know she was about to die. Did not think. There was no time to think. His body moved before his brain could catch up. He ran. Later, people would say it was impossible. The distance was too far. The time was too short. No human could have moved that fast, but did not know about impossible. He only knew about the child and the falling ship and the simple fact that he could not let her die. He crossed the distance in seconds. His hand grabbed the girl. His body turned. He wrapped himself around her like a shield, curling his back toward the sky. The ship hit him. 9 tons of metal and machinery slammed into Cole with the force of a crashing meteor. He felt his spine shatter. He felt his ribs break like dry twigs. He felt things inside him tear and rupture and fail. But he did not let go of the child. The world became pain and darkness and the distant sound of screaming. Could not move. He could not breathe. He could only lie there, broken and dying, as chaos erupted around him. Emergency teams rushed to the scene. Aliens shouted in languages did not understand. Someone was crying. Someone was calling for help. The weight of the ship pressed down on him, crushing what was left of his body. Then the weight lifted. Strong hands pulled the wreckage away. Light flooded his vision, bright and painful. Blinked, his eyes found the child. She was there right in front of him, crying but alive, not a single crack on her crystal body. Her soft blue light pulsed with fear, but she was whole. She was safe. Tried to smile. He was not sure if his face still worked. Around him, the crowd had fallen silent. Hundreds of aliens stood frozen, staring at the broken human who had thrown himself under a falling ship to save a child that was not even his species. The warriors who had been nearby stood like statues, their black eyes wide with something that might have been shock. A woman pushed through the crowd, screaming. She grabbed the child and pulled her close, her crystal body flashing with terror and relief. She looked down at the blood pooling beneath him, at his shattered form. She said something did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. Thank you. Why? How? He could not answer. His vision was fading. The world was getting dark and cold. The last thing Cole saw before he died was the child, safe in her mother's arms, her crystal tears falling like diamonds. Then there was nothing. Or so he thought. Because Cole was not done yet. The universe, it seemed, had other plans for the human who would not let a child die. And when he opened his eyes again, everything he knew about his place in the galaxy would change forever. But that is a story for another time. For now, floated in darkness, broken and empty, not knowing that his simple act of sacrifice had set events in motion that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. He had just wanted to save a little girl. He had no idea what that choice would cost him, or what it would give him in return. Woke up, and that was the first impossible thing. He should not have been alive. He remembered the ship falling. He remembered his bones breaking. He remembered the darkness swallowing him whole. Dead men do not wake up. But here he was, floating in some kind of thick, warm liquid that glowed with soft green light. His body was wrapped in the gel like a baby in a blanket. He could feel it working on him, tingling against his skin, doing something to his broken parts. He tried to move his fingers. They moved. That was the second impossible thing. His spine had been shattered. He had felt it break. A man with a broken spine does not move his fingers. Blinked slowly, trying to understand where he was. The room around him was white, so white it almost hurt to look at. Strange machines hummed and beeped, covered in symbols he did not recognize. The air smelled clean and sharp, like lightning after a storm. And standing around his medical pod, arranged in a perfect half-circle, were 12 of the most terrifying beings had ever seen. Warriors, but not normal. These ones wore armor that looked ancient and ceremonial, black metal carved with patterns that seemed to move when he was not looking directly at them. They stood perfectly still, like statues made of darkness, their obsidian eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his healing heart beat faster. Knew about the military. Everyone did. But these warriors were different. There was something about them that spoke of age and power and traditions older than human civilization itself. One of them stepped forward. He was older than the others, his black exoskeleton marked with lines of silver that might have been scars or might have been decorations. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "You are awake," the old said. "Good. We were beginning to wonder if your species could survive the reconstruction." Tried to speak. His throat felt like sandpaper. "Where?" he managed. "What?" "You are on," the old warrior said. "In the healing chambers of the I Am, Elder of the Order. You have been unconscious for 37 of your human days." 37 days. Let that sink in. More than a month of his life gone in what felt like a moment. "The child," he croaked, "is she?" Something changed in his eyes. It was small, just a flicker, but saw it. Respect, maybe, or surprise. "The child is unharmed," said. "Because of you, do you know who she is?" Shook his head slightly. He had not stopped to ask for identification before throwing himself under a falling ship. "Her name is. She is the only daughter of Chancellor of the High Concord, one of the most powerful political figures in the galaxy." The old paused. "She was under our protection when you saved her. They had been assigned to guard her during a diplomatic exchange. 12 of our finest warriors were present when that ship fell." Processed this slowly. His brain still felt foggy. "So, you failed." A ripple went through the watching warriors. Wondered if he had just said something very stupid, but made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Yes, human, we failed. 12 of the greatest warriors in the known galaxy, and none of us reached her in time. But you did. A cargo hauler, a human. You moved faster than any of us could." "I did not think," said honestly. "I just moved." "Yes," said. "We know. We have watched the security recordings many times. You did not hesitate. You did not calculate your chances. You simply acted." He leaned closer to, his black eyes boring into him. "Do you understand what you did?" Was not sure he understood anything right now. "I saved a kid." "You sacrificed yourself for a child under protection. In our culture, there is no greater act. You created a debt that cannot be repaid." Straightened. "We have rebuilt your body using technologies we share with no other species. Your bones are now reinforced with alloys. Your muscles have been enhanced. Your reflexes have been improved. You will live, human. You will live because we could not let such an act go unrewarded." Stared at the old warrior. This was too much information. His brain could not keep up. "But that is not all," continued. "They have discussed your case for many days. We have argued and debated and meditated. In the end, we reached a unanimous decision." He paused, and the weight of centuries seemed to fill his words. "We wish to offer you a place among our order." The silence that followed was absolute. Could hear his own heartbeat, stronger than it should be, pumping blood through veins that felt different than before. "I am sorry," said slowly. "What?" "No outsider has ever been offered this honor," said. "No none has set foot on our in 400 years, but you have done what we could not. You have shown the spirit of a true warrior. We would make you one of us." Looked at the 12 warriors surrounding him. Their black eyes watched him without blinking. They were completely serious. He was a cargo hauler from Earth. He had spent the last 2 years moving boxes and trying not to get noticed. And now the most elite warrior order in the galaxy wanted him to join them. "I do not know how to fight," said. "Not like you. We will teach you. I am just a human. I am not strong like your kind. Strength can be built. What cannot be taught is the willingness to sacrifice everything for another. You already have that." Was quiet for a long moment. His new heart beat steadily in his rebuilt chest. His enhanced fingers gripped the edge of the medical pod. He thought about his life before this moment, the boring days, the lonely nights, the feeling that he was just waiting for something, though he never knew what. Maybe this was what he had been waiting for. "If I say yes," said carefully, "what happens?" His face shifted into something that might have been a smile. "Then you face the trials, and you prove to all who doubt that a human can stand among the." Took a deep breath, his new lungs filled with air, his new body hummed with unfamiliar energy. "Okay," he said, "I will try." The 12 warriors remained still but felt something change in the room. Approval, maybe, or anticipation. He had no idea what he was getting himself into. He only knew that he could not go back to moving boxes after this. Something had changed in him when he threw himself under that ship, something that could not be unchanged. For better or worse, Cole had taken his first step into a larger world. And the galaxy would never be the same. The planet was a world of fire and darkness. Volcanoes rose from plains of black glass. Storms rolled across the sky without end, lightning cracking through clouds that never cleared. The wind screamed constantly, carrying ash and heat across landscapes that looked like they had been born from nightmares. Stood at the edge of the proving grounds, looking out at the hellish terrain, and wondered what he had gotten himself into. The trials of worth, they called it. Every warrior had to pass these trials before being accepted into the trials had been designed hundreds of years ago, created to push bodies to their absolute limits. Bodies, not human bodies. Stood beside him, his ancient armor reflecting the red glow of distant lava flows. "Many of my brothers do not believe you can survive this," the old warrior said. "They think we have made a mistake by offering you a place among us." Nodded, he had felt their eyes on him since he arrived on, some curious, some hostile, most simply doubtful. To them, he was a soft, weak creature from a primitive world. The idea that he could stand among their elite was almost insulting. "What do you think?" asked. Was quiet for a moment. "I think the universe is full of surprises. I have lived for 300 years and I am still learning what is possible." He turned to face directly. "The trials will break you. That is their purpose. The question is whether you can be broken and still keep moving." Looked back at the volcanic hellscape. His enhanced body felt strong, stronger than he had ever been. But he knew that would not be enough. They were bigger, faster, tougher. They had natural armor and centuries of warrior tradition. He had none of those things. What he had was stubbornness, and maybe that would have to be enough. The first trial was the trial of endurance, and the other candidates were dropped into a frozen wasteland on the far side of the planet and told to march. The destination was 72 hours away. There was no food, no shelter, no help. The candidates moved through the snow like machines, their exoskeletons protecting them from the cold. Felt the freeze immediately. Within hours, his fingers were numb. Within a day, his lips were blue and cracked. On the second night, he found the frozen body of a large beast, some kind of predator that had died in the storm. The other candidates walked past it without a second look. Stopped. He used his knife to cut open the creature. He crawled inside its body cavity, using its remaining warmth and its thick hide to protect himself from the wind. It was disgusting. It smelled terrible, but it kept him alive. When he finally reached the finish point, he was the last to arrive. His body was covered in frozen blood and animal fat. The observers looked at him with something between disgust and amazement. "He crawled inside a dead animal," one of them muttered, "like a parasite." "He finished," replied. "That is what matters." The second trial was combat. Each candidate had to face other warriors in single combat. Victory was not required, but candidates had to demonstrate skill and spirit. Lost his first fight in 30 seconds. The warrior hit him so hard he saw stars. He lost his second fight even faster, and his third, and his fourth. By his seventh fight, the watching crowd had grown bored. The human was clearly outmatched. He could not compete with strength and speed. His enhanced body was still nothing compared to theirs. But kept getting up. Every time he was knocked down, he stood again. His nose was broken. His ribs were cracked. Blood dripped from cuts all over his face, and still he stood. His eighth opponent was a massive warrior known for his brutal fighting style. Looked at with contempt. This would be quick. The fight began. Charged like a thunderstorm, his fists swinging with enough force to crack stone. Dodged and weaved, too slow to match speed but just fast enough to avoid the killing blows. Then caught him. His massive hand closed around his arm, trapping him. Felt the bones creak under the pressure. In that moment, did something unexpected. He dislocated his own shoulder. The pain was incredible, a white-hot explosion that nearly knocked him unconscious. But his arm slipped free of his grip, and while the warrior was still processing what had happened, struck. His fist hit the cluster of sensory organs on his neck, the one weak point in armor that had studied during his recovery. Staggered, his grip loosened, and one arm hanging useless at his side hit him again. went down. The proving grounds fell silent. A human had just defeated a warrior. It did not matter that it was only one victory out of 8 fights. It did not matter that had needed to injure himself to win. What mattered was that it had happened at all. Stood over his fallen opponent, swaying on his feet, blood running down his face. He looked at the watching crowd and said nothing. There was nothing to say. The final trial was the trial of sacrifice. The candidates were placed in a situation designed to test their willingness to put the mission above themselves. The details were kept secret until the trial began. When arrived at the testing chamber, was waiting for him. This trial requires a demonstration of selflessness, the old warrior explained. The willingness to give everything for something greater than yourself. Nodded, preparing himself for whatever challenge would come. But shook his head. You have already passed this trial, human. You passed it on the docks of Prime when you threw yourself under a falling ship for a child you had never met. He placed his hand on shoulder. You had no training, no enhanced body, no hope of survival, and still you acted. That is the spirit of the... Was too exhausted to speak. His dislocated shoulder throbbed. His broken ribs screamed with every breath. But somewhere beneath the pain, he felt something warm spreading through his chest. He had done it. Against all odds, against all expectations, he had survived the trials. The ceremony was held that night, in an ancient hall lit by torches that had burned for centuries. Knelt before the assembled, his body broken but his spirit undefeated. Spoke the words that had been spoken for generations, the words that welcomed new warriors into the order. And when he finished, he drew his ceremonial blade and pressed it against his chest, right above his heart. You are no longer just human, said. You are our brother, our equal. Rise, Cole, and take your place among us. Rose, his legs shook, his vision blurred, but he was standing. Around him, the warriors who had doubted him, who had called him weak and unworthy, stood in respect. Not because he had proven himself their better, but because he had proven himself their equal in the ways that truly mattered. He was one of them now. And nothing would ever be the same. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. A human had joined a member of that primitive species from the young planet called Earth had been accepted into the most elite warrior order in known space. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. And yet, it had happened. Cole became famous overnight, though he never wanted to be. On the news feeds of 100 worlds, his image appeared. The security footage from Prime played on endless repeat, showing the moment he threw himself under the falling ship. Commentators analyzed his every move. Experts debated what it meant. Some called him a hero, others called him a fool, a few called him a threat. The reactions varied from species to species. The whose child he had saved celebrated him. Chancellor herself made a public statement, calling a shining example of the potential that exists in all beings. She pushed for humanity to receive greater recognition in galactic politics. Trade deals were signed. Diplomatic channels were opened. For the first time since first contact, humans were being taken seriously. The species known for their cold logic were fascinated. They had always dismissed humans as emotional and irrational, but they could not deny the efficiency of his actions. He had calculated nothing and saved everything. Their scholars began studying human psychology with new interest. They themselves were divided. The younger warriors saw as proof that their traditions could adapt and grow. The older ones worried that accepting an outsider would weaken what made them special. But all of them, young and old, had watched the security footage. All of them had seen a human do what 12 could not. That was not something easily dismissed. And then there were those who were afraid. In the shadows of galactic politics, certain powers had benefited from humanity's low status. Trade guilds that exploited human labor, mining corporations that used human colonies as cheap sources of raw materials, political factions that saw Earth as a resource to be controlled rather than a civilization to be respected. These groups watched Cole's rise with growing concern. If one human could join what else might humans achieve? What would happen to the careful balance of power if this primitive species suddenly demanded a seat at the table? They decided that Cole needed to disappear. The first assassination attempt came 3 months after his acceptance into the Order. Was traveling through a space station when a sniper's beam cut through the crowd, missing his head by inches. His training saved him, the enhanced reflexes kicking in before his conscious mind even registered the danger. The second attempt was poison, slipped into his food at a diplomatic dinner. His rebuilt body detected the toxin and rejected it, leaving him violently ill but alive. The third attempt was more creative. A bomb, hidden in a gift that was supposedly from a grateful family. Found it before could open the package. The old warrior's hands were steady as he disabled the device, but his eyes were cold with anger. "They fear what you represent," told him afterward. "A human who stands among the proves that the old assumptions about your species are wrong. Some beings cannot accept that." Was tired of being a target. He had never wanted fame or importance. He just wanted to do his duty and live his life. But that was not an option anymore. "What do I do?" he asked his mentor. "You survive," replied, "and you show them that humans are not so easy to kill." So survived. He learned to watch for threats, to trust his instincts, to never let his guard down completely. His brothers and sisters helped, forming a protective circle around him without ever making it obvious. They had accepted him as one of their own, and they would not let their brother fall to cowards and assassins. But did more than just survive. He became an ambassador. The Chancellor requested his presence at diplomatic functions, knowing that his story carried weight. Stood in grand halls beside politicians and nobles, uncomfortable in formal clothes, saying little but meaning much. His presence alone sent a message. Humanity was worthy of respect. He visited human colonies on the edges of settled space, places where his people struggled and suffered under unfair trade agreements. He could not fix their problems with words or weapons, but he could give them hope. He could show them that a human could stand among giants. And slowly, things began to change. The trade guilds that had exploited human labor found themselves facing new regulations. The corporations that had treated human colonies as property discovered that their practices were being investigated. The political factions that had dismissed Earth as irrelevant realized that ignoring humanity was no longer an option. Did not do these things himself. He was just a warrior, not a politician. But his existence made them possible. He was proof that humans mattered, that they could achieve things no one expected, that they deserved to be treated as equals. Through it all, his bond with them deepened. He trained with them daily, pushing his enhanced body to its limits. He learned their language, their customs, their history. He taught them about humanity in return, about their strange sense of humor, about their ability to improvise and adapt, about the stubborn refusal to give up that seemed to be built into human DNA. Became something like a father to him, though neither of them would have used that word. The old warrior had lived for 3 centuries and seen countless things, but he admitted that continued to surprise him. "You are not what I expected," said one evening, as they watched the storms roll across volcanic plains. "What did you expect?" asked. "I expected a human, soft, weak, limited." The old shook his head slowly. "Instead, I found a warrior, different from us in body but the same in spirit." Considered this. Maybe that is what makes us human. We are soft and weak and limited, but we do not let that stop us. Made that grinding sound that served as laughter. Perhaps that is your species' greatest strength. You do not know what is impossible, so you do it anyway. A year passed. Cole settled into his new life as best he could. He was still uncomfortable with fame, still annoyed by political games, still amazed that he had ended up here of all places. But he was also happy, in a way he had not been since leaving Earth. He had found a family he had found a purpose, he had found a place where he belonged. He should have known it would not last. The galaxy was changing, old tensions rising to the surface, old conflicts threatening to reignite. And Cole, the human who had thrown himself under a ship to save a child, was about to find himself at the center of it all once again. But that is a story for another time. For now, he stood among his brothers and sisters, watching the storms of feeling grateful for every impossible moment that had brought him here. He was home. 1 year after Cole joined the galaxy stood on the edge of war. The old conflict between the hives and the conquered had never truly ended. It had only been sleeping, waiting for the right moment to wake up. Now, after decades of uneasy peace, both sides were mobilizing their fleets. Accusations flew across diplomatic channels. Minor incidents were treated as major provocations. The flames of war were being fanned by invisible hands. A summit was called on neutral ground, a massive space station called the Accord Platform, floating in the void between territories. Every major power sent representatives. They came with their crystal ships. They came with their hive carriers. Dozens of other species arrived, hopping to prevent the catastrophe that loomed on the horizon. They were there as well, serving as neutral guards, stood among his brothers and sisters, wearing the black armor that marked him as one of them, watching the politicians argue and negotiate and threaten. Chancellor was there too, leading the delegation, and with her was her daughter, now a year older than when had saved her life. The little girl had grown, her crystalline body harder and brighter, but she was still young, still innocent, still unaware of how close the galaxy was to destruction. When she broke away from her mother and ran to him. The guards let her pass, knowing who she was and what she meant to the human warrior. She called, her voice like bells ringing. She had learned his name, learned a few words of human language during the past year. Her mother had made sure of it. Knelt so he was at her level. "Hello, little one, you have grown." Nodded proudly. "I am bigger now, stronger." She reached out and touched his armor with her small crystalline hand. "You saved me. Mother tells me the story. She says you are very brave." Felt something twist in his chest. "I did what anyone would do." "No," said with the simple certainty of a child. "Mother says most people would not. She says you are special." Before could respond, alarms began to scream. The explosion came from somewhere deep in the station, a massive blast that shook the entire structure. Emergency lights flashed red. Automated warnings echoed through the halls. The summit had been attacked. Moved instantly, grabbing and pulling her clothes. Around him they formed a defensive circle, their weapons drawn, their black eyes scanning for threats. The politicians were screaming, running, trying to escape the chaos. "Report," commanded, his voice cutting through the noise. One of the younger warriors checked his communications device. "Explosion in the central core. Structural damage is spreading. Multiple sections are losing atmosphere." His voice tightened. "The Chancellor's quarters have been isolated. The whole section is collapsing." Chancellor's mother, trapped, looked at the child in his arms. Her crystal eyes were wide with fear, but she was not crying. She was looking at him, trusting him, believing that he would make everything okay. "Where?" asked. The young warrior sent coordinates to his display. The route was dangerous, cutting through sections that were already failing, but it was possible, maybe. "I am going," said. Grabbed his arm. "The structure is unstable, you may not make it back." "Then I do not make it back." Handed to one of the other warriors, a female named who had become something like an aunt to the human among them. "Keep her safe." He ran. The station was dying around him. Walls cracked. Floors buckled. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burning metal. Pushed through it all, his enhanced body moving faster than any normal human could, his training guiding him through the chaos. He found Chancellor trapped beneath a fallen beam, her crystal body cracked but not broken. She was conscious, her light flickering with pain and fear. "My daughter," she gasped as lifted the beam away. "Where is?" Safe said, "Can you walk?" She tried to stand, but her leg was damaged. Did not hesitate. He lifted her in his arms and started moving back toward the safe zone. But the station was not done trying to kill them. Another explosion rocked the structure and saw the blast doors ahead beginning to close. Emergency protocols were sealing off the damaged sections. If those doors closed, they would be trapped in a section with no atmosphere. He ran faster, his legs burned, his lungs screamed. The Chancellor was heavy in his arms, but he did not slow down. The doors were closing, 20 feet away, 15, 10. They were not going to make it. Through the Chancellor, through the narrowing gap, a desperate heave that sent her sliding across the floor on the other side. Then he turned and braced himself against the doors, trying to hold them open. The hydraulic systems fought against him, millions of pounds of pressure trying to crush him. His enhanced muscles strained. His alloy bones creaked. He felt something in his back begin to give. But he held. Seconds passed, then a minute. The doors pressed harder and pushed back, his teeth grinding together, his vision turning red at the edges. On the other side, Chancellor was screaming for help. More arrived, led by. They saw what was happening and moved to help. But the doors were too strong even for them. If let go, the doors would close instantly. There was no way to get him out. Met's eyes through the gap. The old warrior's face was carved from stone, but could see the grief beneath it. "Go," gasped, "get them out of here." Did not move, does not abandon his brothers. "Then let me give you an order, for once." Managed something that might have been a smile. "Take care of, tell her I said goodbye." The old's jaw tightened. For 300 years he had never wept. He did not weep now, but something in his eyes broke. "You have been the finest of us," said. "In all my years I have never known a truer warrior." Nodded, his strength was failing. The doors were winning. And then, impossibly, help arrived. The rescue teams had cut through from the other side. Fresh air rushed in. New hands joined and all working together, forcing the doors back open. Fell forward as the pressure finally released, collapsing onto the floor on the safe side of the doors. He could not move. He could barely breathe. But he was alive. He was alive. The summit reconvened 3 days later in a different section of the station. The attack had been traced to an extremist faction that wanted war between the and the. They had failed. The explosion, meant to divide, had instead united. Both sides had seen their people working together to save lives, had seen a human nearly die to rescue a chancellor. Peace accords were signed. Not perfect peace, but a start. The galaxy stepped back from the edge of war. At the ceremony, stood in the back, still recovering from his injuries. He wore his armor, though it was dented and scorched. He wanted to leave, to find somewhere quiet, to process everything that had happened. But a small figure made her way through the crowd to reach him. Looked up at him with her crystal eyes, bright and clear and full of questions. She had been told what happened. She knew that it almost died again, this time for her mother. "Why?" she asked. It was the question everyone asked, the question that had followed since the day he threw himself under a falling ship. Knelt so he was at her level, just as he had done so many times before. He was tired. He was hurting, but he found the words. "Because you were there," he said, "and I could." Considered this with the seriousness only a child could manage. Then she reached out and put her small hand on his chest, right above his heart. "Thank you," she said, "for being there." Felt tears prick at his eyes. He had not cried since leaving Earth, since leaving everything he knew behind. But now, in this moment, with a child's hand on his chest and a galaxy saved from war, he let himself feel it all. He was not a hero. He had never wanted to be one. He was just a man who saw someone in danger and moved. That was all any human could do, really. See the problem, move toward it, hope that was enough. Most of the time it was. Behind him, the stood in formation, watched his human brother with something like pride in his ancient eyes. They understood now, all of them, what made humans different. It was not strength or speed or technology. It was not even courage, not really. It was the simple refusal to calculate the odds when someone needed help. The willingness to throw yourself in front of a falling ship for a child you had never met. The stubborn, stupid, beautiful insistence that every life mattered, that every person was worth saving, that no one should have to face the darkness alone. That was humanity. That was what Cole had shown them. And the galaxy would never forget.